classy.
Open the meeting at 6 o'clock and we are being recorded. We're being recorded on Zoom, I think, at least once, but
Zoom
not the
recording.
regular.
And I see our assistant administrator is on.
Oh, you have an assistant administrator?
We do.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Full disclosure, she's my daughter-in-law. But I recuse myself on everything.
I guess I will announce for those people that are on the meeting right now that we have the audio inputs turned off as part of the interviewing process. So all we have, folks can hear us, but at large cannot present questions.
I have a question. Do you guys take questions in your Zoom meetings from the online people?
We have a spot in our agenda where we do audience participation, and if they want to participate at that point, we'll ask about anything on the agenda, and then.
What do you do if somebody goes rogue? Mute?
We really haven't had that, to be honest with you. We've had people join in Zoom from, like a lawyer or something like that, but we haven't had any. It's more like if there's like a person here that wants to speak up on an agenda item that we do.
We made a decision a few weeks ago that we're not accepting public comments from.
Yeah,
from
online.
From Zoom, it's been a problem.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
You mean typed comments or people that dial in and actually speak?
People who are on, because my opinion frankly has been that you don't know what those people are doing, you don't know what they've been doing, you don't know their state of mind, and if you want to, well, you can't come right now, but typically you come to a selectmen's meeting, there's a certain amount of decorum and behavior that you have to present. And in my course of service for the town, we have asked people to leave due to their condition. People showed up half drunk and other things, and I
Not
just.
lately.
No, not in the last few years.
Not lately. I think you could, the other thing is you could have them type in a question if they have it, and then if you wanna,
What we've done is ask them to
Right.
get a hold of the administrator.
Yeah.
and submit whatever questions they have, and then we'll address them, and then if it's on the agenda, then we'll allow them to.
that works.
I think for the most part, we implemented the control because our meetings were going really long, from 6 to 9:30
another
to 10,
thing,
because people wanted to be chatters, and so Kara just we changed the rule that said, hey, sign up if you have a topic you want to speak about. If not, we're going to move through the agenda so that folks have if they want to speak about an item, they can say, hey, I want to talk about item K, or I have new business to bring to the town. Great, sign up and say it. Otherwise, we got to move through the agenda so we can get the town business done.
And we don't have to allow them to speak at all.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah, or you could set the 3-minute. I think we had some issues with maybe some hot topics. We set that 3-minute timer.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's always, can you please?
Yeah, which is so nice.
So.
Hey, Rich. Hello, welcome.
All right.
I'm late.
No worries. So
Arctic out there.
you have in front of you a lovely folder put together by the town administrator with resumes and questions. So we were just going to be you were gonna report to us or brief, someone was gonna brief us. Josh
Okay.
said that's the
I
task.
can give you a quick briefing.
If you want to flip around in front of the camera, that'd be awesome, Captain.
You have to climb under the table.
No,
There's a microphone. You can go right to the head of the table. You go to the head of the table. There's a microphone right there if you'd
I don't
like.
have my shorts on under my dress. So originally we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, this has been a long process, 11 candidates.
Yeah.
We've narrowed it down to 2. We feel both candidates are very qualified. We already said, there are both resumes and both sets of questions for each candidate. And what we did, and it seemed to work very well, a round robin. So everybody got a chance to ask the question, as well as if there was something else, just please remember, there are questions we are not allowed to ask by state law.
Yes. So we'll try to stick to
I'm
the
looking at
script.
answering 10.
We've had folks go rogue in the past, but we
Yes.
won't stick to
Yeah, so if I stand up in the back and go, no,
Okay.
please don't ask that question. So, but that's what we'll do, and our first candidate is here, so I'll go get Sean.
Sean is
Bring him
first.
down. Sean Boyd.
So, and Kara and I decided we're gonna ask the written questions, but you know, of course, based upon response, or if there's something else, you guys can chime in.
Do you need a pen? You got- oh,
Who's the we?
Caroline.
Oh, so we're just sitting back and we're grade
No,
mode.
we're gonna do,
Okay, total stalking grade mode, got it.
we'll just go back and forth and
With
then,
sinister eye looks and,
Oh, I
okay,
have
good.
that down.
It's hard with the mask though.
I know.
Well, I think I can pull it on.
So we're all set?
We're
good.
I just want to make sure.
That's a good one.
So 1 through 5, 5 being best. Let's just make sure we clarify that before. Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah, it's at the
either
top.
way, your
It's at the
scores
top,
will be
right?
consistent.
Okay.
Right. Whichever scale you choose, your scoring will be consistent. Silence, kill, or vibrate, your option.
I have a new phone, I can't find silence on it, so I just turned the sound down.
I just don't like going uninteresting. You hear a whole story about all.
Yeah, you do. It is interesting in the meetings.
Bring something on. Everybody loves it.
Do they? Good to know.
From this way, Sean, we're gonna put you at the head of the table down here.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi, Sean.
How's everybody
How are you?
dealing with
It might be
COVID?
if we introduce ourselves.
Yeah, I was just thinking we should go around. Tom, do you want to go ahead and start?
Tom Ackley, Blandford, Selectman.
Carol Tender, Blandford, second.
Richard Holmes, Winchester Selectman.
Barbara Huntoon, Chester Selectman.
John Baldessaro, Chester Selectman.
Eric McVeigh, Blandford Selectman.
So welcome. Thank you for coming today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So we've all reviewed your resume and we have a list of 10 questions that we're going to ask. And myself and Barb will go back and forth asking the questions. Everyone will be listening and scoring, and if they have any extra question added onto it, they will ask you that. But for the most part, we'll be going back and forth.
All right, you ready, Sean?
This is all ever be.
Number one is tell us why you want to be the Chester Blandford Police Chief.
Well, as my resume obviously explains, I've had 8 years' experience as a chief of police and pretty much been in a command position since essentially 1992. I retired. I finished my opportunity to work in the town of New Milford. I'd like to get back to the area I grew up in, being a resident and student, and grew up in the town of Lee. Like the area. I don't know if I want to move exactly back to Lee. I do have property, but we're looking at an opportunity, maybe move obviously closer to this area. It's an opportunity that has come through I'm going to say the professional circles to a chief's position, and quality of life issues are what I grew up with. The lifestyle is what I grew up with. The demographics, the economics, the small town, and going to get back to the area.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Second question, identify based upon your knowledge of Chester and Blandford and our demographics, the program areas you would focus on, and describe how you would intend to undertake these tasks as a new chief in about your first 6 months.
Well, I would certainly obviously have as much dialogue as I possibly could with the chief before his final days. And essentially, from what I'm been made aware of or learned of, there's quite a few of the programs in place. Some of the successes I've seen working in rural communities and law enforcement administration such as this are focusing on the calls for service. What's been happening in town, what have police been doing, what are they responding to? Identifying where the department is and where it is going, obviously with dialogue with the chief and dialogue with the men and women of the department. Dialogue with the community leaders, government, social groups, clergy, store owners, business owners, and the like. You can kind of identify and get where the pulse of the community is and what the services are going to need. Looking at the resources within the agency, a lot of the vulnerable population, like the seniors, that are often, I'm going to say, targeted for something as relative as identity theft, scams, things like that. And obviously working to look at their best interest. And one of the programs that's been very successful is organizing, I'm going to say, senior groups. We would have a group leader that would have 5 or 6 participants in their selected group. They would make regular daily phone calls. If the 5 or 6 parties in their group weren't reached, they'd reach out to a member, to the department, and we would send an officer over to double check to make sure everything's okay. We'd have a network of contacts through family members, working with the emergency services like the ambulance. We would have almost what they call a life chart, medications, doctors, emergency contact. So those were some of the effective things for the senior populations. Looking at the demographics, that really is almost 10 years old now, and any website that I've looked at, we've got a median age of anywhere between 38 to 45, so it's a younger median age, but we still have the vulnerable populations that are still in town, and whether it's through the senior centers or the senior support groups, those are very necessary public groups to assist. Also, the schools are working with the school committees and the school faculties, and I know schools have closed in the area because of population drops, but the high school, the middle school, and the elementary schools, there's a lot of parent interaction. That's I'm going to say a congregate group that there's a very loud voice there, and it's got to be heard. So working collectively and cooperatively with the faculty, the staff, and Board of Ed and the parents are big target groups, and you can learn, what their necessities are, what their concerns are. Is something like the child exploitation, the cyberbullying, the school safety initiatives, and welfare of the students to and from school, and a lot of that is parents need to know the kids are safe. So those are very necessary projects that I feel we need to address. Basic efforts to build partnerships with various social groups in the community, business owners, churches, and that takes physical interaction to actually be at the meetings and be available, and the open door and the after hours and the phone calls, and spending time with the groups that need the service. Some of the things back to the seniors that I've been successful with is a triad. It was a formal partnership between the seniors in the community and the police department. School resource officers are very valuable with the available resources of having personnel, but it also built a relationship between law enforcement and students that don't normally have exposure to police officers other than what's on television or what might be, a bias they may be introduced to, and those are very necessary because the open dialogue with law enforcement and police in and of itself it gives an opportunity to give an opportunity for mentorship and guidance. Another cultural group I think would be very important to address is the members of the department in and of themselves. What is their goals? What is their desires? What do they see as strengths, weaknesses, growth areas in the agency? And give them the opportunity to advance, if available, utilizing training opportunities, regionalization of training resources. And like I said, you can get an awful lot of the pulse of the agency from the people that make it up. So that's an important, I'm going to say, group in the area that needs to be addressed. Understanding an interactive and cooperative relationship with the fire, ambulance, and public works. Everything from as simple as a road closure with a tree down to severe weather events and the like. So, and emergency management, critical incident command, and the like. So working with those employment groups, I'm going to say, within the community are necessary as well.
Excellent. Nothing from you guys? Okay. The next question is, there are several projects started by the retiring chief that still need support and completion. These include a CAD, an RMS, mobile platform, migration of Blandford's radio system to Northampton Control, and the establishment of a Chester and a Blandford patrol district. Explain your level of commitment to carry through with these projects and why they are important to the progress of the Chester Blandford Police Department and the communities.
As a, I would say, cooperative law enforcement agency, it's something I'm very familiar with. As a patrol trooper, I wasn't isolated to just one town. My patrol district was 3, 4, 5 towns, very similar in size, culture, makeup of communities like Chester, Blandford, Russell, and the like. Most of my patrol experience has been in the northwest corner of Connecticut, where we didn't have full-time municipal police department, so we were essentially out there on our own. That being said, as I graduated into command positions of, my troop command experience, pretty much my last assignment was about half the size of Berkshire County. It was 14 towns, 2 cities, relative to the size of, I'm going to say, West Springfield and Great Barrington were some of the larger cities. But I worked with multiple governments, boards of selectmen and the like. I was regular meetings. Everybody had a basic necessity for police services, but everybody had a little bit different need. So we had to address those needs with limited resources, limited funding and the like, but we met those. So to understand that we're working into a cooperative agreement, there is a cooperative agreement with the mutual, with the services for multiple towns. I'm very familiar with that and what it requires. I would look at the calls for service. I would identify resources necessary to make sure the appropriate personnel are made available for the necessary response. Identify obviously budget needs, training needs to meet the demands or the requirements of how to provide the best service to make the most efficient service deliverability. Into the situation of the communication upgrades with the chief through his right now. I worked on 2 major or capital projects regarding communication systems. One with the Connecticut State Police upgrade to the 800 megahertz system from the low band VHF, UHF systems into a statewide multi-jurisdictional radio utilizing Department of Corrections, State Police, the Environmental Protection, and multiple state agencies. But that being said, pursuant to my service with Connecticut State Police, when I entered into Milford, I conducted what they call a SWOT assessment, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that's department's facing. We had immediate issues of meeting police service calls through patrol structure. It was inefficient. There was essentially the first available officer was sent to the call. That's not necessarily the most efficient. We used to call it closest car principle to see who was available. And we weren't structuring the right people or enough people to the right places. So if you do what they call a CompStat assessment, it's comprehensive statistical assessment of calls for service. How many people are normally required for certain calls like burglar alarms? How many people for as simple as, I'm going to say, a suspicious vehicle or what's needed for a serious assault or domestic. So learning where these are the most frequent, I'm going to say high frequency number of calls, we would dedicate personnel to that. So that eased tensions in police response, police efficiency, and it promoted our, I'm going to say, our efficiency. Into that, additionally, I was also had to restructure the command staff, recent retirements, recent personnel changes. So I looked at the internal skill set, what wasn't there. It was easily recognized why. It was based on training, professional development. So I focused on those groups to bring the future leaders of department forward within the agency. Again, one of the critical infrastructure situations was fleet operations. The vehicles were in complete disrepair. Funding was inadequate to meet the repair of the vehicles. The process to have these vehicles repaired was inefficient. So we looked at things like extended warranties on new vehicles, 3-year lease buy opportunity versus a first-year buy, where we spend $55,000 for one car, when I could do a 3-year $15,000 cost for each car. And that would also include a couple $1,000s for the duration of that serviceability of the car and a long-term repair extra extended warranty. Going back to that, we had a complete failure of our communication system. We looked at really what the fault was. It was a 25 to 30-year-old system based on low band. The newest, latest, and greatest was an IP-based 800 megahertz operational system, what we call a simulcast, that would be more effective. Essentially what they call is a 95-95 coverage is what your optimum coverage through modern communication. I'm going to say goals is that 95% of the area gets 95% of the radio communication availability. We met and exceeded that through our study, and we integrated through grants, $4+ million communication system, working cooperatively with the public works, the town legal staff, fire, and ambulance. And we made an emergency services communication system, not just police. With that, we got great support from the community. Some Homeland Security grant funding got us off and running. We were able to complete the project by the huge cooperative effort of the fire department personnel, ambulance, public works, 16 months ahead of schedule and $158,000 under budget. And everybody had a voice. So it was a complete success. We were challenged with things like land acquisition for tower sites, everything from wetlands to eminent domain to buying properties to put towers up, being out there in the freezing cold, flying a balloon 165 feet so we could show the height of the tower to the area residents to see how invasive it would be on the landscape. So those were things that not only was it just our idea, we worked with the community to get their support throughout. But the communications is huge. It's obviously the most critical of one of the tools that we need. And collectively, it benefits everything from the public works to the law enforcement. So understanding that, I'm not exactly sure what level the chief is looking at, if it's a matter of just getting interactive or interoperable radio systems in the vehicles to work with the communication and dispatch center, or it's tower sites to, I'm going to say sport buildings and servers and fiber optic lines and all that. Then to I'm going to say the big end of it. And if it's just a matter of just looking at equipment to upgrading the vehicles to make them interactive with the area dispatch or area communications, I'm confident I've had experience in that. CAD RMS, we discussed a little bit. It's a TriTech, used to be IMC. I had the opportunity in New Milford to capitalize on that. We brought the system utilizing the available contracted modules, maximize the licensing, and we're able to do everything from our scheduling to records keeping to write the report, send it off through a series of electronic avenues and virtually a paperless system. So our clerical was reduced in responsibility because it was automatically filed and sent to courts and relative investigators and relative units. It's one of the leading, I'm going to say, software CAD RMS systems out there. Very popular in Massachusetts. And I also have experience what they call a next gen, which is a very similar software and CAD RMS program. I like the TriTech much better. It's many of the area PDs are using it now, so it affords interoperability to access law enforcement information from other PDs in the area. It does have available modules that can be through the MDTs made available to the ambulance EMS systems. Fire departments can do their necessary records and logs through the same. So it's not only exclusive to law enforcement, it's also available to fire departments, public works, ambulance. So it can be an interactive municipal collective information.
Thank you. Okay, community policing. It's an important philosophy for our department. Please provide your definition of community policing and how do we anticipate promoting this in Chesterfield?
Which you did kind of answer already.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little.
Expand on this.
Okay, I get chatty. Community policing is really going back to the days of cops doing the right thing and what good cops always did. It really came to fruition in the Clinton administration where there was funding made available to law enforcement to add personnel, to have specific responsibilities, to build partnerships within the communities. it's graduated into everything from school resource officers to bike patrols to bike rodeos, toy drives, food drives, things like that, and just having a cop on the street. The communities like Blandford and Chester, foot patrols would probably not be the optimum, but certainly no reason to get out of your, there's no reason not to get out of your car and walk the street, visit the post office, stop in the schools, see some of the business owners. The other thing is that I found very beneficial is like the citizens police academies. Let's educate the public on what we do and why we do it and how we do it. That reduces the implicit and explicit biases that we face in law enforcement more so today than ever. The ride-alongs are very beneficial. We've got certain, I'm going to say biases against law enforcement or about law enforcement that we can relieve by just having, a member of the community ride along with the officer's face every day. And, I found it very beneficial to have members of the town council, business owners, members of the Board of Finance to participate in our ride-alongs, attend roll calls, meet and greet with the officers, coffee with the cops. Those are big things because it really breaks down those barriers of misunderstanding, and where there's not the facts made aware, sometimes the facts are created. So those are important things. Community policing is really everything from patrolling on the street to, being something simple as sitting down at lunch in the cafeteria and trust me, I've had my fill of fish sticks and tater tots, but it's very important to interact with those. And it's also important to be the police when you have to be the police. And also not every situation is a law enforcement situation. It's a social situation where it's something as simple as dealing with a child that's discontent in its home life and it's contemplating a runaway situation and relieving status and bringing some resources to family members on what's available as a parent to work with is, I'm going to say support services for children that are potential runaways, addiction services, things like that. So community policing goes beyond what it's graduated in over the years into more providing, identifying services to parents, families, youth in crisis, families in crisis. Domestic violence is a huge law enforcement obligation today, but more so what's available after that call. Where are the shelters? Where are the social services? What's available? And everything from, like I would say, marriage counseling to what's happening with I'm going to say a distant child in a relationship. Of course, how to handle, you're getting a text from your child on the couch next to you. I mean, what's happening today? Those are certain things that, there are groups out there are programs. Hammond County offers a wide variety. There's local programs I'm aware of in the community, and I see they're posted here in the town hall. So again, it's gone beyond just being a cop on the street. It's being a cop on the street, doing what you have to do to help, not just affect an arrest, but here's our services available. So there's education training capacity that all the officers know that have to know what's available as a litany of resources. And additionally, it's a message that has to be brought to every member of the agency, and they have to buy into it. That this is what we're doing, and through a definitive, I'm going to say clear and accurate mission statement, and a clear and accurate understanding of all levels of the agency that this is the direction we're going and why we're going there, and give them the input, or give them an opportunity for input on how to get there. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so describe your general management style regarding these areas and provide examples of how you would deal with each, starting with the select board, then town administrator, employees, and community relations, which you actually touched on quite well.
Again.
Yeah, I don't need to go over that again, but the select board and the town administrator and your employees.
I'm going to start with the select board. Example being, I guarantee that you can't even stop and get a cup of coffee without somebody tapping you on the shoulder, what's going on. So everything from, hey, what about the accident last night on North Road, to what's the police doing regarding this? So there has to be an interactive, regular dialogue, enhanced communication, whether it's as simple as I'm going to say a copy of the calls for service made available through, obviously the technology today. Regular meetings, updates on statistics, everything from, I'm going to say, budget issues of overtime, training opportunities, where the department is, where it's going, things that I'm aware of as a chief, or what the panel or board is aware of as, obviously the leaders of the community. So understanding that, that really kind of keeps, I'm going to say, open lines of communication, keeps everything in the right direction. There's no one's getting blindsided at a meeting. No one's getting blindsided just trying to grab a coffee. It affords an opportunity for the elected officials of the town to be educated, active, and engaged in the department's operations and our service to the town. The town administrator I guarantee that if we had anything newsworthy, would be one of the first to know through either direct phone call. Whatever, is the most efficient or effective or desired, text message, email, or the like, regular meetings with the town administrator to identify the challenges the department's facing, the success of the department, the attaboys of congratulations or commendations to the officers regarding services, regularly. So those are recognized, and that not only the board of selectmen are aware of it, but the town administrators are aware. Hey, we're doing good work. Let's catch a cop doing something right. So that's one of the things that is the open dialogue, regular reports, regular understanding of what is going on in the police department, why it's going on in the police department, and equally be available for criticism to say, well, that's not going to work for us, in interactive dialogue to understand, because it's not the authority and the role of chief of police doesn't give you the crystal ball of all what is well. So you have to be available to take some criticism. You have to be available to redirect your efforts based on the experience that members of this community have that's beyond the scope of the chief of police's experience. Okay, we have the town administrator.
The last one was employees, which I do think we touched on.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, it's giving them a voice, an open door. And there's going to be certain operational issues that the chain of command has to be recognized, because there's obviously some persons that have a higher level of command in the agency below the rank of chief, and they worked hard to get there, and that has to be recognized. I would be effectively recognizing democratic leadership style. Everybody has an input, everybody has a voice, everything they have to say has a value. So understanding that would be the primary opportunity, or the primary effort I would have is, I'm available. You have an idea, I want to hear it. You have if something's not looking to be the way to do business, let me know. But there's also going to be that time where I have to be the autocratic, where I have to step up and be the chief, because when in command, you command. And that's where my skill set would come in. But you can always learn something from somebody for some reason, some way, shape, or form. It might not be the entire answer, but I guarantee there's a part of it that has a value. And if the officers know that, now they're engaged. And now they have I'm going to say, a voice, a dog in the fight. They know that they have something valuable. It might not be the primary level of value, but it has something there. So they can be much more active and engaged in the mission and the success of the agency. Equally, as a police chief, I have to show that their success is essentially very important. And because the more successful they are, the more successful the department is. Everything from opportunities to train, opportunities to demonstrate that training, exercise that training, and opportunities to really kind of get out there and exercise their ideas. So that's where I've seen where a lot of people have come up short in leadership, is just because you're the leader doesn't mean you're the leader of it all. You have to work cooperatively in a leadership capacity and be in command when necessary.
Thank you. So the next one, we sort of have a unique situation here. As police chief, it's vital for all the departments to work closely and cooperatively. So what's unique about us is that the challenge is you're going to be working with 2 fire departments and 2 highway departments. What are your ideas for facilitating this coordination? Was it my question, or did I take it?
No, that's yours. And can I add something to this question? I also like to add in, working with 2 different highway departments, fire departments, in a limited budget. because I don't see that in any of the questions.
Okay, perfect.
And you came from New Milford, which was, we're a collective of what, maybe 3,000 people between the two of us?
Yeah.
So, and with that comes a 3,000 person budget.
Absolutely.
So I think that could be a significant challenge. I'd like to know, in answering this question, I think it's a good place to put it.
And again, my budget experience started at 5.3 year one. When I left, I had
1,000 or million?
million.
No.
Great, so,
No, I understand. But let me, but
Take a bunch
through,
of zeros off.
oh yeah, I certainly understand. But that was at the apex of the budget expenditures. And before, then when I got control of it, when I left, it was a little over 4.8. So I reduced it. Yet we had 15,000 more calls for service. We had a new radio system. We had new equipment. We had, our opportunities for training were huge. And what it was is through recognizing efficiencies and simple things like, an officer that contractually was given an additional hour's pay if he arrived at the police department 1 minute after his shift. So we looked at collective bargaining measures to reduce all that. That's not applicable here. So what we're looking at is 2 different fire departments. My exposure in New Milford was we had 4 independent fire departments, all volunteer. Great group of guys. When I first got there, they didn't talk. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't talk to police. They didn't talk to public works. Public works didn't talk to police. Police didn't talk to public works. So I broke down those barriers. We got that through meetings, training, collective training opportunities. Just let's put the egos in the closet for a minute, get work done. There's a lot. We have a common goal, common mission. Let's meet it. So again, we're not an island as a police department. We can't function alone. The fire department needs our assistance in some of their calls, and we need assistance from the fire department in many of ours. A lot of it is I've seen as a troop commander. For some reason, some of the officers and troopers developed I'm going to say an attitude towards the fire department. The fire are volunteer. They're coming out in their time, and they're doing business the way they're trained. Because law enforcement sometimes doesn't understand the training of fire response, we needed to address that. So we consolidated and cooperated a lot of our training opportunities with the fire department on their drill nights. I bring the supervisors in. I have the supervisors attend the fire department's drills. We learned what the fire department was doing and why they're doing it, and they learned what we expected in law enforcement. So that certainly broke down some of the barriers. And that's a zero cost. 2 different public works departments. Essentially, the goals, and I'm going to say the focus of their responsibilities are similar. Resources are going to be a little bit different. Some of the roads are obviously different. We've got some of the state roads, we've got our secondary roads, we've got gravel roads, and we've got the roads with no names that go nowhere, except to someone's very elaborate residence or very simple residence, either way. But all those take the same amount of attention. And working with public works, we're going to need essentially the same training opportunities. This is what we expect. This is what you expect from us. And understanding that through regular meetings, communication, identifying what we know to be resources. I worked in one town. I supervised one town that had 3 public works members. One was on vacation, another one got sick, another one got injured in a car accident. And there was a situation we need somebody from public works. There was nobody. So, we've got the town the town first selectman out moving a truck for us, and his brother-in-law using a backhoe for something, but it was crazy stuff. But understanding that there's limited resources in these opportunities, but you have to capitalize on what their ceiling of ability is by resource, by finance, constantly monitor time, overtime, use of personnel resources from the police department, because those are the budget numbers that go crazy. And it's through regular assessment and regular evaluation of where we are today in the budget, whether it's a weekly, here we are with the budget, when we expended 2.5% last week, and we know that our maximum expenditure of budget operations for overtime is 0.75. Those are huge numbers. So understanding whether it's 5.3 million or 53,000, 10% is 10%, 7%, 5%, 1%. So proportionately, I'm going to say the exercise is similar in the management of the budget, but more critical when your tax base is not 30,000, but 3,000. So those are priorities a lot more. And as a chief, I would receive regular reports from staff members regarding overtime use, and as a chief in a community of this cooperative effort, that's on my desk every day. That's my responsibility. And it would take definite interaction with the finance office about, where we are with certain line items, where we are with expenditure percentages pursuant to what time of year it is within the fiscal year. And if it's an adjustment that has to be made, then you make your adjustments, because at the end of the year, you don't want to be chasing supplementary appropriations, and you don't want huge encumbrances. You want to balance out, because that's what the taxpayers asked you to do when you had your financial plan. So to show up in June with, several $1,000s on a line item, well, why are you that far? Why was I taxed on that money you're not using? So those are responsibilities that you have to have when you plan your financial, your budget, obviously, at the beginning of the year. So that takes regular review and assessment.
I think that was your question, and I brought it in.
No, this is you. We're good. We're good. You're number 7.
Describe 3 specific accomplishments in your local government law enforcement career that you consider to be the most significant.
I would say the consistent reduction in the budget over the years by assessing service deliverability, resource options, and not looking at an increase, even though expenditures and collective bargaining agreements essentially raises weren't going down, raises always went up, but still meeting my budget, either restrictions, mandates, or reductions, either by direction from the mayor or by my own efforts. And we did a lot of that through, I think I did 3 collective bargaining agreements with the police union. We looked at things from minimum staffing to, I would say, shift schedules to training opportunities, from individuals, 2 or 3 individuals attending one training would incorporate sometimes up to 12 hours overtime. Or I'll send one individual for 3 hours overtime to train the trainer, and he'll bring that training opportunity back. Sending out teletypes to neighboring agencies, mutual aid agencies that would be coming in to assist us for larger investigations and larger operations. So they're trained the same way we are. That reduces, obviously, multiple thousands of dollars of just travel time to and from the academy when they're traveling to the school classroom. That's a 5-minute trip, and we can incorporate 7.5 hours of training versus 7 hours of training and 3 hours of travel time. So those are some of the things that we use to, I felt would accomplish that we met. We increased our investigative services to incorporate child exploitation, senior victimization, and with that, we reduced the, I'm going to say the interest of, or the issues of cyberbullying, huge psychological impact on students, young people. So, and opening up social services and what's available for parental counseling. And this is all kind of the same program. We were essentially connected. It was essentially hit heavy with opioid overdose, heroin overdose. You're not going to arrest your way out of the problem. So working with legislature, working with the local hospital, working with certain social groups, we brought in more of an education, make parents aware of what to look for with their children, their friends, their brothers, their sisters for drug addiction, and things were some of the indicators. Additionally, we utilized, we brought in, we supplemented a police position for a social services position. So what we had was a crisis coordinator that would respond to the overdose calls. He'd coordinate services for the families, in the overdose situations where there was a death. Obviously, paraprofessionals or professionals to work with the family through these crises. So those were just some of the things. So I'm going to say our social interaction and addressing social issues was big, and utilizing reduction of funds. Another, I'm going to say very important thing was recruitment and retention in law enforcement. Today, it's very difficult to have a number of qualified candidates. It seems the process eliminates them much more readily than it used to. I'm sure the chief's experienced it in the past. And to do that, we looked at different training opportunities. We brought in a diversity interest. Instead of having the, tall, statuesque, male officer, I promoted the agency through the interest of working with inner city employment groups, statewide employment groups, college campuses, job fairs, and I brought in all aspects of the agency. It gave us a great opportunity to grow our agency through a number of female officers, Hispanic officers, African-American officers, and that culture is very beneficial because the diversity opportunity is essential in letting us and growing us as individuals. So you really learn what the different cultures that is brought to the table by these different, groups within the department now. And if you can start internally from the department, you handle the opportunities and I'm going to say the challenges outside the department more effectively. So that was one of the things we really grew the department internally through a diversity effort and training. So I was very proud of that. And lastly, I have to say that we grew into an investigative agency that was one of the lead smaller departments in the county. It's very seldom that the district attorney would allow homicide investigations to be handled at the municipal police departments. And we regularly handled homicide investigations. Most recent was a double homicide, and without the assistance of the Connecticut State Police. So that was one of the accomplishments I feel was very important. It boosted the morale of the unit, it boosted the morale of the department, and it really brought a confidence level from the community really out towards the men and women that serve in the agency.
Excellent. Thank you. Just FYI, we've got 3 more questions, and I think we are on a little bit of we've got about 10 minutes left. So we're gonna stick with all 3 of them. Do you guys want me to eliminate any of them, or? We've got one regarding junk and code violations, domestic current events, and then, the last one is just anything else.
Yeah, I think we're good.
We're good. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and
You're
ask.
just on a 12-minute clock.
Just
Say when.
Yeah. So, so the next one is, if junk and other code violations are issues in our areas, what should the role of Chester Blandford Police Department be in addressing this quality of life, health, and safety issue?
You said junk.
Yes, junk and code violations.
Like junk vehicles,
Yep.
things like that.
Very similar to situations what they used to have an abandoned vehicle statute in Connecticut. A lot of it is, I'm going to say, it's the way things are. Families have collected unused or, I'm going to say, worn out vehicles and allowed them to remain in their yard. Some are aware there's a code violation, some are not. So let's address it as, let's initiate, you're not going to run around and write tickets to everybody with a junk car day one. So I would approach this as a public address. It's everything from obviously a blight issue, and there's also a health issue by the contaminants the vehicle is leaving those areas. And using that as an example, I've been very successful through, I'm going to say, public and media release, newspaper. Facebook is a huge conduit today, Instagram, as well as the town website. And a lot of the problem is the property owner doesn't know what to do with it, doesn't have the resources to do anything with it. So one of the things we did in Milford in one of the troop operations was we worked with a local junkyard, and they were willing to go get these cars for free as long as there were certain documentations necessary. And those that didn't have specific things like previous registrations or titles, we put them on the fast track with the salvage companies through motor vehicle to get the necessary paperwork so they could be seized and destroyed. So we gave them an opportunity to get rid of them without a cost out of their pocket. In return, the salvage owner or the salvage yards would have a return on the scrap and things like that. So that was one of the things that worked out pretty well. Some people just didn't want to get rid of them. So there's also, some of the housing authority courts in Connecticut and officials, there's ways to deal with that through, we used to, one of the housing officials in the state of Connecticut would issue a subpoena or a summons for the violation, and there'll be a court response. Does it really mean anything? You're just expending money that normally could be used to remove the vehicle for attorney fees. So it's been very successful to work with salvage companies, salvage yards, auto recyclers, et cetera, in seizing these vehicles. There's also a national charity group that collects vehicles. So there's opportunities outside of law enforcement. I would address that as public service until the absolute last measure has to be the law enforcement issuing the summons or taking official court action. Zoning is a big thing to work with on that. Some of these, I'm going to say abandoned or junk vehicles in the yard are also relative to illegal auto repairs. So now you're working with registry of motor vehicles for addressing that. That's where law enforcement comes in. But that being said, zoning officials are very valuable in a cooperative effort. Law enforcement, public messages and media releases, and an avenue to work with the people, assisting them in getting rid of these cars. That'd be probably the priority, to work with the people versus introducing a punitive measure right away. But if we can't get the cooperation through their efforts and ours, then we have to do what we have to do.
Excellent. Last one, I think, or second, sort of one. Considering domestic current events, how would you plan for and act upon events should any occur in the Berkshire Pioneer area, in our area?
My experience is that usually these groups have the best interest. It's their message. They want to get it out. I've had experience with protests. I don't like using the word protest. I more like we have a message. We want to get it out. These groups usually announce their interest. They announce their location. What I found very, very successful is, first of all, meet with the coordinator. Usually you find out this is our message. This is how we want to deliver our message. I've been successful. It's like, well, that's great. You want to be in the town green and you want to occupy it, but that's not the right area to do it. I can give you this area that I think will be better. Why don't you meet me either day before or earlier in the day, and we can set it up. We'll give you a primary staging area that'll be secure, safe, so you can deliver your message without interference from anti-protesters. And that's a secondary situation. That's been very successful. You can find out through media release where or through the internet where their previous demonstrations have been. So you can calculate the crowd, how many people you're going to get. Some of these times you get a call, we're going to have 10,000 protesters in downtown Blandford. No, you're going to show up yourself and two others in a big sign. But this is where we're going to put you and have your message. We have town ordinance. We are not going to allow you with I'm going to say electronic amplified communication system. We're not going to allow you to hinder traffic flow. We're not going to allow you to, consume public properties that are normally for other purposes, things like that. But you usually have this open dialogue with the organizers, and it really relieves tensions, and they usually flow smooth. You need to regionalize your available resources for response in case there is a problem. That'll be working through with the state police or other various agencies in the town, ambulance, fire, public works for barricades and snow fencing, or whatever it is you need for some type of, isolation. Area police chiefs, this is what's going on, chief association, Mass State Police, and the like. So you've got everything from let's work with these people. Let's give you the opportunity to, with your message. Some of the messages, you see law enforcement engaged in delivering the message. I'm an advocate to stay neutral. I may love it, I may dislike it, but remain absolutely neutral because that's what the taxpayer is paying me for. So I think it's been great that some of the social messages that are very popular, police are actively engaged in, but there are persons and members of the community that may not agree with it, and I think it's necessary to stay neutral. But support everything we can. Again, very productive is gathering previous information, intelligence, so to speak, providing an opportunity for them to deliver their message, and provide the people that don't agree with the message an opportunity to be heard as well, but not to interfere with either one. So.
Thank you. The last thing we have for you is what questions do you have for us? Or is there anything else you want to share with us that we didn't talk about?
Can I back up?
Yes, go ahead.
Just to follow up here, when do you interfere?
Excuse me?
Following up on your last question, your last statement was to stay neutral and not interfere, but when do you interfere?
Oh, I'm saying stay neutral, not participate in the message delivery. It's been a point where, example being a group of activists have consumed the entire north or east and westbound lanes of a major highway. There's a point where you work with them, the message is delivered, and at some point in time, traffic has to prevail. The opportunity to transit the state has to prevail. At that point in time, and usually, and very, well, not usually, it's usually a mandate that you prepare what they call an operations plan. It's specific to the situation, the events, communications, the execution, and the assessment. So you would have certain stages of what you would accept and where the behavior is over the line. And that is through not just the opinion of one chief, but through a collective mutual aid responders, the resources available. And at some point in time, when it interferes with the normal, I'm going to say business of the community, that's certainly recognized by everybody at this table, that's when you have to step in and be the police.
Anything else before we do? Yeah, so anything else, any questions you have for us or anything you want to share with us that we haven't talked about?
No, I think just the last question about the social, the assembly and the social messages and the domestic issues. It's something that is ever evolving, ever addressed through the revision of policy, not just mandated by an individual department, but by the U.S. attorneys, the states, the district attorneys, legislature with police accountability. It's changing more rapid than it ever was. The old response to tear gas and riot gear is not effective. You have to work with the people. There have to be greater allowances for the behaviors, but there has to be a recognition of at some point in time, there's a line and it's not going to get crossed because everybody in the community that's affected has a say in this, or I'm going to say a voice. And nobody wants to see businesses destroyed. Nobody wants to see property destroyed. And at that point in time, you know that that's where it has to end. So.
I don't have any more questions. Did anyone?
Nope, I'm
Anything else?
I'm good. First interview I've ever done, I didn't ask a question.
Amazing.
I think really the only question I had is what is this communication? I know you talked about upgrading a radio system. Is this a complete radio communication system, or are the individual components of the system, like the vehicle radios, the base radios, the portables, exactly what is the new chief getting into? That would be my only real question. Because that's a huge undertaking to get through the whole.
So I'm not part of the group, you mind if I?
No, please,
Is
go
that
ahead.
okay?
Thank you.
So right now, actually, it was going to be part of my update later this evening, since I had the two select boards here. I just wanted to give a little bit of an update where certain things are at. So right now we have equipment in the cruiser units. We are days away from having our second patrol unit on the road. We've been waiting for the radio system to be put in. We have mobile units, 800 bands, so that we have communication with the state police. We also have portable units, and those are also hopefully days away from being programmed. So each officer on the street, we could even have two-man vehicles or two-person vehicles. Apologize for the terminology, but two-person vehicles that would all have portable radios that they're able to carry with that. I got word end of last week that the migration of Blandford's system should be in place and online before the end of this fiscal year. So by June 30th, we should have that. What that will do is it allows the interoperability through Northampton Control, who will then assist with the migration of highway department and fire department. Ambulance and police are already there, but all agencies will be on Northampton Control and will be communicating through that system. So hardware and equipment is there. It's really a matter of bringing the
So
process.
you're 90% of the way done.
We're on the downhill.
We're really close.
So we're not looking at radio tower sites, land acquisition, FCC frequencing.
That's the state's problem. That's not our problem.
And the state has actually stepped up and.
You don't know what I went through.
Right, and in fairness to the state, they've really stepped up. They created quite an investment to upgrade the radio towers, the equipment that's on the towers. You know, you certainly referred to a few things, duplexing and all. Basically, what's going to happen is Northampton Control is going to be able to identify which tower is being hit by which radios, so that they could, in the event that we had a larger scale type of event, and Blandford's online as well as Chester's online, Northampton Control is able to differentiate between those two agencies and towers. And that way they can separate that for the time being so that they maintain open communication and no one gets stepped on or.
Multiple levels at the same time, yeah, okay.
So
Perfect.
we're fastly approaching that, and I was happy to hear that even with all the COVID that we've been through, that we're getting that close. But I'll certainly provide a little bit more of an update later to both boards on
Okay.
that, but to answer your question.
And the other, this slight differential piece there is our fire department currently goes to a different switch.
Okay,
So you can have that opportunity for
all right,
missing communications.
all right, well, at least it got me kind of more focused on what was expected, so it's important. So, all right,
Well, you know
I know, it's hard to get quick enough. Thank you so much.
all right, I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I
Bye.
appreciate your time.
Oh, no, thank you.
It was nice to meet you.
Nice
We're
meeting you.
shape, but-
That's the hardest part about these. You change everything, change your entire behavior.
I
We
know.
were gonna put the chair in the middle here, but we decided.
Well, I was just glad it wasn't plugged in.
As you're standing,
So,
I do have the question of what is your lapel pin?
It's the FBI National Academy.
I
It's
couldn't
graduate.
read it from here.
No, it's one of the graduate, 241st session. Advanced Level Management Academy. Great opportunity, huge network.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you so
very
much. Nice to meet you. 21st.
Thanks, thank you. No, that's good. All right, thank you.
John, it's because our questions are so thorough.
Yeah, that's it.
So we just have to make sure we add the budget piece to
I'm
that
going
one.
to, yeah. Because I think that's important too.
I do too. I didn't realize it wasn't in there. Thank you for catching that. That was one of my questions on the resumes.
So now what do we do? Just go to the next candidate and talk?
Yeah,
about
so
it?
we'll just kind of, I think they will tally up our numbers.
Yep.
And see. For the
That's
last
easier.
question, it's kind of a hard one because, I mean, there's a rating for it, but,
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I don't know.
And, you know, frankly, the rating, I don't think.
It's not gonna be the deciding factor. We're not gonna just tally up numbers and say.
Sure, we
okay,
have a discussion anyways.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
They lead you to further discussion.
Although in the past, it's funny, our numbers have been pretty in line, I think, when we interview. I think
In
we've
the,
been-
in the most recent interview I did, we had, I think, 190 points available. And, you know, we found our top two candidates were at, 3 points differential on a 190 point scale. So you have to sit there and say, look, you're less than 1.5% difference between your candidates. That somebody saw a 5 over here, somebody saw a 4 over here for the same question. Let's talk about the two candidates and the strengths and weaknesses they bring to us. So it's different if you're looking at that and there's a 40-point spread between your number one candidate.
Sure.
Hello, hello.
This is Tammy Wiggis.
Hey,
You
Tammy.
all know her.
Howdy.
Doing well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
You got the hot spot.
I like that. Said nobody ever.
So the way we've been doing, we've been sort of going back and forth, Barb and I, asking, we've got 10 questions.
Okay.
9 really, so the last is sort of what questions you have for us. So we'll go back and forth, and then if there's anything addition that anyone else sees that they want to ask, they will add on to it.
Okay, great.
All right?
All right.
I
Okay,
can't
why
remember.
don't you start?
Okay. So now we got to read different ones. Now, I don't know.
You want to do introductions first?
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank
Yes.
you, Eric. Tom, do you want to start? Introduce yourself.
Tom Ackley, you know.
Yes.
Tell us why you want to be the police chief for,
We're just introducing Tom.
oh, sorry.
That's
We're just saying, hey.
Hi, Tom.
Carol, let's have Eric.
Hi.
Barbara Martini Chester.
Tammy, you know me, John, all this.
I do.
And Eric McVeigh from Blandford.
Hi, Tammy Weedus for you.
All right, so first off, tell us why you want to be the Chester Blandford Police Chief.
Okay, so I've been a police officer just over 19 years now, and I've been in Chester and Blandford for just over a year. I was born and raised in a small town of Southampton, which when I was a child was a very small town. I love the small town feel. I was a call volunteer firefighter for Southampton for 15 years. So working with people that I know, I really enjoy that. I enjoy when I go to a call or go to a, to assist somebody that I know them when they know me. I feel like the interactions just go a lot smoother and people are more comfortable when you know somebody. I'm very community oriented. So working up here, I feel would give me a great opportunity to continue fostering that and, helping the communities of Blandford and Chester. I've already taken part in several different activities within the towns. I walked with Josh with the Walk with Blandford and had great conversations with many of the people there. I ended up pushing a stroller for a mother that had 3 kids total, 2 running around and 1 that I got to push. So I mean, it was an honor for me, especially with today's climate with law enforcement that she was able to just say, okay, we'll push. And then here we go. I did the trunk or treat, which was quite fun. I didn't understand that you could decorate your vehicle. So this year, I'm rocking it.
Yeah.
And then I read for the Chester Library to the kids virtually,
That's awesome.
which was probably almost as nerve-wracking as this. So I enjoy interacting with the community and I feel that Chester and Blandford will give me that opportunity. I did a lot of that in East Hampton. I was a domestic violence liaison in East Hampton, and that allowed me to work firsthand with a lot of different, typically women, that I wouldn't normally handle because I would do follow-ups on calls and stuff. So I could go hands-on. And then when I would see them in the community, it was kind of just that bond, that look in the eye, like, thank you, I know you. So I have a ton of ideas, which I have handouts if you guys want now or not, but I have handouts of different community ideas that I have to bring. And my mindset is a small town cop. And I've always been that way. I grew up that way and I've continued. So this is where I flourish. I never had a desire to work in a big city where you're just going call to call. I like to have that personal touch.
You brought handouts?
I did.
Hand them out.
All right.
We can
So
pass it around.
it's, yeah,
I think we're
absolutely.
quite capable as management. We'll have to see.
So there's 2 stapled and 1 single on top.
Okay, 2 staples and 1 second.
Yeah, so,
Now I have to follow directions.
I'm gonna jump on to the next question.
sure.
Because once we get going, it does take some time, so we want you to have the opportunity to answer all the questions.
Sure.
So the next question is identify based upon your knowledge of Chester and Blandford and their demographics, the program areas you would focus on and describe how you would intend to undertake the tasks as new chief during your first 6 months on the job.
Okay, so some of those are outlined in the short-term goals. One of the things that I would do for the programs for the community would be adding a sharps container and a drug take back box for each town. Those worked really well in East Hampton. And I recently, my father-in-law passed away and we had all of these drugs. And what do you do? My mother-in-law wanted to flush them down a toilet. I said, you can't do that. So I just feel like it's a great avenue and a great, outreach for the community to be able to have access to those items. I looked into how the bulletproof vest grant, a lot of the officers in town are in need of a new bulletproof vest. They're about $800 to $900 a piece. With this grant, it's a federally funded grant. They would pay half of the cost, with the state picking up the other half. So it'd be no cost to the towns. So that is a program grant that I would be jumping on to start pretty quickly. For other programs, it would be, I want to start social media, either a Facebook and or an Instagram accounts for the department. It worked well in East Hampton, and it was received very well from the public. It's a very quick and easy way to get information out. If we have road closures, power lines down, avoid these areas. And then it's also a way for the community to reach out to us. They, with the messenger and all of that, they can reach out. Sometimes people don't have access to phones. They can't call out, but they can send a quick message through the social media that we would have access to. Another program that I want to work on would be, I understand there's a 911 grant out there that allows for the address number signs for your house. And I've noticed in driving around in the two communities that a lot of houses are not marked with numbers. And I have been a part of having to drive by the houses to find numbers and then backtracking. So I would love to do that grant where we could get those signs out, put them out front. It's going to help police, fire, EMS, and responding a lot quicker. So the first 6 months, those are the programs that I have in mind.
Excellent. Okay, so there are several projects started by the retiring chief that still need support and completion. These include a CAD and RMS mobile platform, migration of Blandford's radio system to Northampton Control, and establishment of a Chester Blandford patrol district. So explain your level of commitment to carry through with these projects and why they are important to the progress of the CBPD and communities. If you need me to repeat any of that, please just ask.
No, I understand. I understand completely. I'm 100% committed to all of that. The chief and I have had extensive talks, and it's actually listed on my short-term goals. To start with, definitely the CAD system. We use IMC in East Hampton, and I'm very familiar with it. It's a very easy program. It would allow us to use, by using the IMC program, it's one database, and it will allow us to easily catalog all of our calls for service. It allows reports to be written very easily that we could see whether we're in either of the stations or in our cars with our laptops. They're all connected. Right now it's a little bit different, but with the IMC, it allows us quick access. So if we deal with somebody, we put them in anywhere that we are using that system, we're able to pull it up. So 100% on board with that. The radio systems, definitely I know the chief is in the process of having Blandford change from Berkshire Control for their 911 to Northampton Control. Definitely 100% with that. We need to get one dispatch center going. Right now, if we're on patrol, we don't sign on with Berkshire Control. So the only way that we would hear, because we're not dispatched to Blandford calls, so the only way that we would know of a call going on is if we hear state police. And multiple times, I know all of the officers, when we're on, we're obviously monitoring state police B5, which is out of Russell. They're the ones covering Blandford. When we hear them get called out, if we're not already tied up, we're calling state police saying, hey, we are on, we'll take that. And we're letting them know. So to continue to try to get Blandford's 911 into Northampton Control, now they're going to be dispatching us to both communities. And it's for obvious reasons, it's going to be so much easier. And then there was a third.
The CAD, RMS, migration of radio system, and then the establishment of Chester and Blandford Patrol District.
Correct. So establishing the patrol districts, our second cruiser is still in the process of getting worked on. Thank you to our radio company, Pittsfield Communication. So once that radio is in and ready to go, we're going to have a second cruiser on board, and that's going to allow 2 officers to work at the same time. I know, myself included, but the other officers, we're hungry to get that second car. Now we have in a 5 or 6 hour shift, we're going to have cars dedicated to one for Blandford and one for Chester. But what that also does for us is that allows us backup. We now are guaranteed a backup officer versus having to rely on state police, who are absolutely wonderful and will definitely be there for us if they're not already tied up. I think an average shift for them, they have 2, maybe 3 officers in our area. It's not very many, and their area of coverage is vast. So, I mean, I've been on calls and asked for another unit and had to wait 20 minutes. So having that other officer, knowing that they're right there, it's just going to, the officer safety aspect of this is huge, as well as having the coverage in the 2 towns.
Okay, community policing, and you really kind of answered this, especially with your short-term goals, but you can still expand if you want. Community policing is an important philosophy for our department. Please provide your definition of community policing and how you anticipate promoting this in Chester and Blandford. So like I said, I think you kind of touched on it.
I have, yeah. So to me, that is the one of, if not the second most important part of policing. And especially in today's climate, we need to let the communities know that we're here for them and that we're here to help. And for me, community policing is having people know your name. Like I had said, going to a call and saying, hi, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, knowing a little background of them, knowing their kids or their family, and them knowing you. When I was in East Hampton, the biggest compliment that I could get is I would walk up on a call and I would hear, oh, it's Officer Tammy. It's okay. She's one of the good guys. You can talk to her. But they knew my name, and I was always, when I started at 22, almost everybody I dealt with was older than me. So I never wanted it to be officer, and then my last name. I'm Tammy. Just call me Tammy. And many ideas, as I have laid out, many ideas for community policing. One of the big ones I think is I would love to do a cookout and do it in the summertime, either do it at a park, or I know in East Hampton, we shut down part of a road and we had music and we had games for the kids. And then we would have the public safety come out. It was majority police, but up here, I would love to get the fire departments on board. And it would give, especially Fire Chief Small, an opportunity to talk to the community, which he loves to do. And Chief Motter is also a talker. So I'm sure that they would be on board with me. But then we have a very relaxed atmosphere where the public safety are cooking hot dogs and hamburgers, serving them to the community, having an opportunity to talk in a relaxed atmosphere. It's almost like you have music, you have games, everyone's relaxed, and they get to see the police officers as humans. Like, we're not just people wearing a uniform that are scary coming through your door in time of need. Now we're in shorts and we're in jeans. We're going to be identified, so you know who we are, but you're going to get to know us. And I just think that's huge. I recently had an opportunity at the end of my shift one day to play football with a young man in Chester named Ben, who I found out wants to be a police officer. So I was so excited when I said that, because I'm all about planting seeds. So I'm hoping that one day down the road, he'll do what I did. But if I ever had to go to his house for a call, I imagine that his comfort level is going to be a little bit better, because he's going to say, oh, I know her. And so for me, that's what community policing is all about. And it's about giving back. I would like to establish a police association that would allow us to accept and give out donations and give things out. As police officers, we can't accept donations. We can't ask for donations. If we have an association, a little bit differently, now we have an avenue that we can give back out of the association. We can buy items and give back. I would love to buy little footballs and have the CBPD on there, and give it out to the kids, or buy pencils or pens or rulers, just something that they know it came from their local police department, and you're giving out. And now the officers are interacting with the kids and such.
Great. Okay, next one up. Describe your general management style. regarding these areas and provide examples of how you would deal with each. So we already touched on community relations, so I'm gonna sort of cross that one off. So the three would be select board, town administrator, and then your employees. So your management style and sort of examples of how you would deal with them.
Okay. So I imagine my management style to be much the way I am as a police officer. Like who I am right now or who I am in uniform or when I go home, it's the same. Like I try not to change or put on airs or what have you. So I would just approach the select board. Okay, let's sit down, let's have a conversation and have open communication so we're all on the same page. Obviously, if I got this position, I haven't been a chief before, so I would be coming to you guys saying, okay, what do you need me to do? And let's figure this out so that I can do my job, but also meet the needs of the select board. The two town administrators are awesome. So I don't foresee having an issue working with either of them. I've had many of conversations with Kathy and Josh, and I feel like the lines of communication are definitely open with them. And then my officers, I foresee myself I would be a working chief. So I'm answering calls and I'm doing everything that they're doing. I would never ask my officers to do something or put them in a position that I myself wouldn't do. So even though I would be the chief and I would have to manage them, I feel like I would also, I'd want their feedback. It's their department. And even though I probably wouldn't be able to do everything that they would want me to do, I would do my best to meet their needs and, be open to conversation, having meetings. Let's discuss what's working and not working. And, let's figure this out.
Okay, as police chief, it's vital for all departments to work closely and cooperatively together. Is it a challenge to be working with two fire departments and two highway departments? What are your ideas for facilitating, can't speak any longer, cooperation? And also, we added on to this, and how would you work within the limited budgets that the towns have? So it's a couple of questions here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I obviously know the Blandford fire chief very well. We were both in East Hampton. And I've gotten to know and really enjoy the company of the Chester fire chief. I've already had conversations with both of them. They've told me the different activities that they do and the different things, that they're looking to do. And my first response to them is, well, what can the police do to help? So I don't foresee there being an issue in working with the chiefs. The highway bosses, especially in Blandford, I've had to reach out to Rainey on several occasions. And he has been very responsive. I had a tree down where I couldn't move. I was blocked. And I had a little handsaw and I said, well, Rainey, I can use my handsaw. And he said, no, we're gonna get a guy out to help you. So I believe that I'm a people person and I can talk and I can, the communication, again, it just goes back to communication is open. And I know with the two fire chiefs, they enjoy a good meal. So a little bribery with I'll buy lunch. And, but no, it's all about communication. And honestly, after talking with the two fire chiefs, I really believe that we all have the same interests and the same goals in mind. And I don't think that is going to be a tough role to manage at all. As far as working within the limited budget, I plan on writing a lot of grants. I haven't written any grants, but I have a lot of resources that I can reach out to, and that's listed under the information page on me in the bottom. There's officers in each of those departments that I've listed that have written grants and are very willing to help me write grants. I'm also willing, I understand that there's training out there and courses that you can take on specifically for grant writing. I know what the budget is for the police department. And with the ideas that I have, I know that it's going to take grants to get them done. So that is the biggest goal that I have is the grant writing. So I can get free money for the towns to do what I want and need to do and provide the services for the department. For instance, last summer, Russell Police was able to secure a grant for the Click It or Ticket, it's called. They're all Chapter 90, so they're all motor vehicle. And you're just looking for seatbelt violations. But along with doing the seatbelt violations, you can stop for any motor vehicle violation. But what that does in the public's eye is they see cruisers out. They see the police out there. And, you know, there's the perception that they're safe. And it's a reality because they are out there and they are going to be able to respond to emergencies. But being on that grant, that money came from that grant. It's not costing the town anything to have that officer out there. So now you can have double coverage. You can have a second officer out there. Maybe he's getting paid by the town, but the second officer isn't. So now you're getting double the coverage for half the money, if you will, so definitely the grants.
Just an item of interest on that, the Camden County Sheriff's Department has a grant writer. They've offered their assistance to us many times.
Wonderful.
So
I'll talk to you after if I get this. I will take all the help I can get.
Okay, I'm up, right?
Yes.
Okay. Describe 3 specific accomplishments in your local government law enforcement career that you consider most significant.
So as a young officer, I was given the Police Officer of the Year from the Elks Club for saving the life of a man, or assisting in, because it wasn't just me, assisting in saving the life of a man that had been stabbed multiple times with multiple arterial bleeds. And I was able, with the one paramedic that was on scene, to stop the bleeding and get him to the hospital, and he is alive today. That was a huge motivator for me, getting that early on in my career. Another accomplishment for me would be, I received, I would say 4 or 5 years ago, from the Highland Valley Elder Services. And I don't remember the title of the award, but they had given me an award that exemplified that I was helping the elders. I was huge on, because it kind of went hand in hand with my domestic violence. I was constantly on talking to the officers in East Hampton saying, did you guys contact Highland Valley for this? Did you? And just explaining to families and the other officers what Highland Valley had to offer to the elders, that it wasn't just for elder abuse, you know, it could be for a multitude of reasons. So when I was given that, that one kind of shocked me. I never expected that, but it was nice to be recognized for that. I've also been given the Medal of Valor through East Hampton. That was a huge accomplishment for me. And that was in a situation with a gentleman that had a firearm and was attempting suicide by cop. Thankfully, we didn't have to take the lethal action, but it was a lot of, I talked and talked and talked to him, and I got him to finally throw his weapon, and it ended peacefully with him going to the hospital, and the girlfriend that he had come to see, everybody was safe. So I would say those are probably the 3 top.
Excellent. Okay, the next one is junk, specifically junk vehicles and other code violations or issues in our area. What should the role of the Chester Blandford Police Department be in addressing this quality of life, health, and safety issue?
I will say that it's definitely an eyesore, and I would definitely want to address that. Again, coming from East Hampton, we had a city ordinance where you could have one vehicle that was unregistered exposed. After that, all others had to be either covered or in a barn or garage, out of the sight from your neighbors and the public. And if you had multiple vehicles, it would start with a warning. So we would go to their house, explain to them, we would have a printout much like this that we could give them with the city ordinance on it, with the fine amounts and different phone numbers for like the companies that could come to get them. So we would start with a warning. We would give them usually 14 to 30 days, depending on their story that they gave us. After that, it became a fine. We may go back after the time frame and say, okay, listen, you didn't comply. This is what could happen. Maybe give them another 7 days. And then after that, it would be fines up to a certain point, and then it could become criminal. It worked most of the time, and people really worked on, and then we would work with them as well, because we had people that we knew of that would come and tow the vehicles because they were turning them in for scrap and for, they wanted the cars for the money. So that was pretty effective. So I would say as of right now, off the top of my head, I think that would be my approach. If I hear of another decent one, I'd be all ears.
Thank you.
What's your approach? Can you back that up on me?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Can you back that up on me? What would be your approach?
My approach would be handling it by working with them, giving them the 30 days to try to get rid of the additional cars. So they could have one unregistered vehicle. And then every additional, after the 30 days, it's a fine per day. And just try to work with them to get those vehicles out of there. We would help by giving them phone numbers, because we knew of local people that were, scrappers that would take the cars and, get rid of them. But if they didn't do anything, they would be fined until a certain point, and then it became criminal. Does that explain it?
Next question.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this me or you?
Okay.
You did the joint car one.
Yes.
Okay, that's right, we're switching. Considering domestic current events, how would you plan for and act upon events should any occur in the Berkshire Pioneer area?
I think I would, because the Chester Blandford Police Department is so small, I would definitely let surrounding departments know, let state police know for safety precautions. But I think I would try to reach out to whoever's organizing it, or organizing if it's a demonstration or what have you. I would try to reach out to the head of that and let's say, let's do this a different way. Can we sit down and have a conversation? I would try to alleviate having any kind of demonstrations, protests, riots, God forbid, in Chester and Blandford, and see what their main concerns are, and see if there was some way that I could either, quell their concerns, help them in any way to understand how Chester and Blandford, police department handles, different situations that they may be concerned about. But definitely I would be letting surrounding towns know in case it turned violent anyway, we would have enough officers to protect the community and the people and the officers on scene.
Last one. Do you have any questions for us or anything else you want to share that we did not talk about?
I don't believe I have any questions. I just want to say just a little bit more about me. I just want to say I'm 41 years old, and a typical police officer in Massachusetts retires at about age 55. So I have just shy of 18 years in a retirement system. So I would be here for the next probably 14 or 15 years. I'm in this for the long haul. This is not a job that I would take and be gone in 3 to 5 years. I'm here. And I would love to, as if you saw my long-term goals, I would love ultimately to get a second full-time officer, but I have to do that by staying here and, working with the community and doing things like that. I do have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I've, like I said earlier, a police officer for 19 years. I've been a domestic violence advocate liaison for just over 10 years. I'm a sexual assault investigator. I've performed many investigations. I've done attempted murder cases. I've done rape, child sexual assault. I've done a bunch of in-depth investigations. So I would definitely be willing to take those on if I could, because I know that it's a balancing act between my administrative duties and the duties of a police officer. But I definitely have that experience. I've gotten to know a lot of the community members up here in Chester and Blandford, and they're great. They're awesome people, and I enjoy working with them. I went to Carms the other day for lunch, and I was in uniform, and I actually met Chief Motter, and we had a great lunch. But walking in, I'm talking to different people that I know, and I just feel like I would be a huge asset to these towns because I've been up here and I know how it is. I live in Russell. I'm 8 minutes from the Blandford-Russell town line. I'm small town. That is who I am. And I want to continue to serve this great community. I got on a year or so ago when we were already the Chester Blandford Police Department. So I've never just been a Chester cop. I've always done both. And I like the idea. And I think it's wonderful. And I would tell any prospective towns coming forward, hey, is this a model that we should take on? I wasn't there for the headaches of when it was formed, but now working, I would say it's absolutely a great, great program for these small towns. And I would just continue to advance that.
Excellent.
Oh, we got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember talking with you and hearing you talk, and you mentioned that you would like to put a sergeant on for each town. Is that still something in the back of your mind?
It is. And the reason for that is for some reason, if I'm on vacation or unable to make my office hours, if I have a sergeant dedicated, and they would work both towns, but I think it would be strictly for administrative purposes. So I'd have one sergeant for Blandford and one for Chester. So if I'm not able to make office hours, I don't have to rely on just one person to cover me every time. I'm going to share those responsibilities, but they're still going to work patrol wise. They're going to work both.
Right.
But it's definitely something that I have in the back of my mind and would consider. Right now, there's a wonderful sergeant on our department, and he's capable of and has been doing assisting the chief in the administrative duties.
Just curiosity.
Yes, sir.
I have a question for you. Do you have any experience with I know you've experienced working within the budget. Do you have any experience developing the budget for the department?
I do not.
Okay.
But what I do have is Chief Elnicki, and he had told me that if I end up with this position, that in the future, he told me that he would come to finance committee meetings with me. He would, he has shown me the budget and he has explained to me how he comes up with the budget. And I know that he is a wonderful resource that I can reach out to. I personally don't have any experience, but I have resources and people that I can call that work with budgets every day.
He's a good doobie.
He is. He is. Good guy.
Tammy, I have an additional question as well.
Yes, ma'am.
So the idea of working with your staff and sort of a give and take and getting your input as well. But what would happen if they push back? How would you handle, being the boss?
I think it's going to come down to what are they pushing back on, and is it something that I can have a conversation with and explain my position? But ultimately, if it's a safety issue or something that I just am totally against, I'm going to explain my position to them. And, I understand that I'm going to have to make hard decisions and sometimes they're not going to like those. And I understand that. But the current officers that we have on the department are great and, they're willing to work with us. The chief has had a couple of department meetings and there's been ideas brought up and the chief is just like, that's not going to work. And then explain why. And they understand. I don't know specifically what I would do. I think it would be a situational kind of what's my gut telling me here and what am I willing to back off on or not.
Okay,
And just explain, yeah.
all right, great, thank you.
I have one question. What would you consider, Tammy, to be the ideal staffing level, full-time equivalent staffing level for the Chester Blandford Police Department if you had no constraints? We always work with financial limitations. But
Right.
What's the number, just to
the number of officers I want in the department.
That you would think full-time, some are part-time, some are full-time. What does it translate into the number of positions that you would need in the department full-time to make it exactly
Right.
what it could, all that it could be and all it's needed, not one person more, but not one person less.
Right.
What's that?
Oh, man. The numbers that are coming to my mind are 7 to 8. I would love to, if I had a second, let me just talk this out because I don't know the answer. But if I have a second full-time officer on with me that can overlap the hours that I could have on nights. One of the things that, let me back up. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to go into Northampton Control and say, I want to figure out when are the busiest hours, when are our calls of service, whether we're taking them or state's taking them, but when are our busy times? And that's when I want to staff officers. So hypothetically, if most of our calls for service are coming in between 5 and 7 at night or 8 and 9 at night, my intent is to have officers working during those busy times so we can handle those calls. So if I can have a second officer on and maybe have them work a 3 to 11 shift and then have a part-timer on that I can put on 3 to 11. So I have my 2 officers on. Ideally, I would say 7 or 8 officers could do it. I would love to do 24-hour coverage, but right now, I don't know what our call volume is overnight. And I don't know when our busiest time is. I don't know what our call volume is. I know that the times that I have worked at night after dark, the towns, they quiet out, but I don't know. I know that's for traffic. I don't know if that's for calls. So I guess without knowing when our busy times are, it would be hard to say. But so to answer your question, I would say I would love to have a second full-time officer that can work and then have 5 or 6 other officers part-time that can fill in on days and evenings and then potentially overnight as well.
So that might translate into 3 or 4 full-time equivalent officers, recognizing you have more people, but they're part-time. So just trying to get a frame and understanding of what that looks like.
I think so.
Right now, we have how many?
Full-time.
Equivalent, would you say?
We-
The equivalent, what is the total hours and?
I think most officers right now are working anywhere from 5 to 10 hours a week, I would say on average, and the chief is nodding, so I'm gonna say. So and there's about 5 officers right now that are working about 5 officers right now that are working 5 to 10 hours a week.
So you get
Sure, but that's not
25 to
full-time.
50 hours a week.
Yeah, I get
And
it.
no officers are full-time.
You got 5 people, but they're.
25 to 50 hours a week is what we're saying.
Mhm,
Just
Yep.
Educating me.
absolutely. Absolutely.
What is it? You said don't go too sideways.
We're heading into a budget meeting, hold on.
Wait.
I think we're good, Tammy. Thank you so
Okay,
much for coming.
thank you guys for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the handout.
Yeah,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. That's really helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I like bullet
Thank you.
points.
Thank you.
Try to make it easy.
Thank you,
guys.
I think something happened with the recording.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's, Novus IT is trying to figure out the sound situation
Oh, okay.
as we speak, but it's recording.
So it's still recording?
Yeah.
All
Alright, so,
I've been quiet for a long
You
time.
have.
yeah, you need to
I'm gonna
yell,
go.
Kenny.
Are you feeling okay?
I will be in a minute.
Okay,
How
so
we doing
do we wanna go around and, look at our numbers? Do we wanna talk?
I mean, if you want to talk about numbers, that's fine. To me, numbers don't really.
Okay.
Yeah, to be honest,
I mean, we can get into all that, but I will tell you personally, I think that we had 2 excellent candidates here.
Yeah.
I think you had,
with different strengths.
Yes.
Scott is a much different, Sean is a much different kind of candidate.
Yeah.
He is a high-level police professional, comes from
I just
a
need to
very
stand,
complex
sorry.
agency, used to urban problems, used to a lot of staff, used to
Big
having
budget.
big
Yeah.
budget and having people to help him deal with things. I think Tammy, while she lacks the command experience that Sean has, is already embedded in our communities, knows everyone. She has demonstrated the desire and the drive and the willingness and understands what we're looking for in police force. And I think frankly, some of her answers were spot on what we're doing here. I know, I have no doubt that Sean, professional skill wise, could run circles around her, but Tammy knows what we need here.
Yeah.
And she's already engaged, so as far as I'm concerned, this is an easy decision for me.
That's pretty much exactly where I was going as well. Again, I think Sean has a high level of professionalism, but it's almost apples and oranges.
Yeah.
The town of New Milford is many, many more people. Like I said, much bigger budget. And I really wonder if in the end, that might not be a constraint for him to be used to dealing. Number one, he was a state police officer, and then he was a police officer for this much larger town. And I just wonder, you know, he does talk about trying to personalize things, but again, Tammy's already doing that.
Mhm.
So I almost wonder if he's sort of overqualified for what we need.
I agree with John. And also, she is an officer now, knows the system. I've worked on a few calls with her. She's good to work with.
Yeah.
The fact that she's an officer now, has worked with the chief and learned the ropes, I think she would be a good candidate for us.
I think that has value when you've got an internal candidate
So do I.
who wants to move up. I think that should be rewarded as long as they meet the qualifications.
So the notes I made on mine, for Sean, I did write long-winded. Technical, I really loved his answers about educating the public, all the programs he talked about with the students and the schools and the elderly, and just, I mean, like you said, his resume is stellar. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there's really he's not lacking for anything. And then with Tammy, I mean, my note was passionate. Like, you can really see how much she loves what she does and loves our communities and wants to work with them. And I guess where I'm a little torn, my only area of feeling a little bit wiggly about it is the logistics of writing the budget, of you know, the grant funding, the sort of those things that I know she's going to grow into. So I could go either way. I really could. And I think that she'll get there. I just think she's not quite there yet. I know that Chief Wilnicki will be a huge mentor and resource. But that was the only place I was kind of like waving a little bit.
My only place with Tammy was, I agree with, I've managed people, and I agree with communicating with your staff and explaining what you're doing, but there's a point.
I had the same note that went the question that you
Right,
asked. Yeah.
so when Sean said he'd be chief when he had to be chief,
Yeah.
and that's what I wanted to hear from Tammy.
Yeah.
I think she would grow into that, though. I
So,
think that's a learning skill.
and it could very well be, but that was one area that I had a bunch of question marks, because I just think, you know, you do have to draw a line at some point and say, thank you, I appreciate where you're coming from, but that's not how we're doing it. And she did kind of allude to that, but I don't want to see her waste a lot of time. You gotta cut to the chase.
I heard from my wife the walk with Josh. Tammy impressed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Which is good. This is what we need. We don't
Oh,
need,
yeah, I'm definitely leaning toward Tammy.
we don't need somebody that's an internal affairs investigator or something like that. We need somebody that can go out there and say, hi, how are you? What you doing? How you feeling? And get a response to it. And the other person goes away feeling good about it.
I agree.
Yeah. To your point, Barb, I think that we've had this question before when we were looking at internal candidates for, I want to say it was highway or something. Can the officers look to that person as a leader and follow that person as a leader, I guess is the question.
Yeah, that is actually one thing, after being a peer,
Mhm.
how are they gonna respond to that? And I don't know how the department works, they might respond really well.
Yeah,
I can tell you, because, and so can Dan, I mean, I know those, all of those officers very well for years. You have a very mature department who is very open to leadership ideas. That's not gonna be an issue, no matter who the candidate is. That's not an issue. You don't, this is not a department of kids, this is a department of seasoned professionals who've been doing this for a long time. So that's not gonna be an issue.
Okay, well, regardless, I wanna really feel like she can stand her ground if she needs to.
Yeah, as part of the search committee, as Kathy mentioned, we went through about 11 different resumes, and these were the 2 top candidates. And after our session of questions, very similar to what you've gone through here, we basically gravitated towards Tammy because of her community involvement and her bonding with the community already, and with her orientation with Dan, we moved in that direction.
okay, thank you.
I think it would be kind of hard for somebody that's used to working in bigger communities with good-sized budgets to come into something like this for very small communities, and to him would be working with nothing. I think he would have a tough time
Do
with
you
it.
think that would be
where-
culture shock?
I mean, we're excited to get a second car. I think you got a second car in there.
I disagree with that, because Dave Motter came from a larger community as a fire chief, number one. Number two, the references.
He's our fire chief.
Oh, okay.
The references I've communicated with, were consistent around how he's never added or asked for supplemental appropriation, out of the budget, stayed within
Well,
what
that's
he
true, he did
has.
say that.
There's, you know, I'm not leaning one way or another, I'm fine with whoever you guys pick, but I just wanted to, for the record here, that I don't think it'll be a culture shock in
Okay.
getting to small towns.
I think
Appreciate
my biggest problem is I grew up in a small town, and I've stuck to small town ways, and I've seen these guys come and I've seen them go. And I would like to see somebody that's willing to come in here and work and stay.
Kathy, go ahead.
I do have, 3 letters unsolicited that were sent to, either Chester Select Board or myself that I have. They're all for, Officer Weedus. I made copies, and I'd like to share them because I think it's at this point fair of what everybody should read. One was from Angelique Taroni, who is Chester's head librarian. The other one is from Captain of Operations Robert Powers. And the third is from Sergeant Bruce Nickel, who the second 2 were both also her, were 2 of the people on her references, who I did, sorry.
Good.
Thank you.
That I think it's only fair that you have these before you make your final decision.
I, for one, would actually like to hear the current chief's opinion. Yeah, what do you think?
You know, part of what we were charged with was to evaluate the candidates that apply and then bring forth, 2 or 3 to select boards. I think trying to remain as unbiased, obviously, that Officer Beers works with me currently. I've not had an opportunity to work with Sean Boyne. But I think as you clearly recognized, and we did as well through the process, both individuals have qualifications and are probably polar opposites from one another as far as their personalities and approaches to that. Personally, I think both individuals are capable of being the chief of police. If I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't have suggested that we move forward with the search committee. But I think that in doing our due diligence, we presented you with 2 very viable candidates that really it depends on what you want to see in your community and how you want the police department for the Chester Blandford Police Department to be run moving forward. As I mentioned, after this process, I'd like just a couple more minutes, if you don't mind, just to give you some updates. But we've been able to accomplish a lot, not just as Chester and not just as Blandford, but as the Chester Blandford Police Department. I was actually writing it down earlier, and I didn't realize it's been 2.5 years that I've been the chief of police already for Blandford. It just seems like yesterday.
Oh, Lordy, but we remember yesterday on Facebook.
I know. And then I've been an officer, and then chief 14 years, and then respectively 12 years as the chief with Chester. And it's been incredibly amazing to me, the progress that we've been able to make. I've been in law enforcement for 33 years now, but in just the past 12, we've done things like put laptops in cruisers. We're getting, literally tomorrow, we're getting a thermal printer put into each of the cruisers so we can do electronic citations and things that we don't have to do handwritten and record keeping anymore. We'll have a thermal printer that, here you go, if it's a citation or a report, it's right there in hand, everything else is in the computer. Just all the progress that we've been able to make in the technology and the support of the select boards and the administrators, the communities. It really has taken us a long time to get all this together. And I think when you get a candidate or candidates in front of you that will support the progressive nature, it's a win.
Yeah.
It really, for me, it kind of boils down to what kind of personality do you want the police department to have as you move forward.
Very fair question.
Thank you, Chief.
I am in agreement with the strengths that were pointed out, both candidates. But I think in light of particular needs that we have and the opportunity we have to appoint someone that really adheres to the region and understands the community, I would make a motion if it's in order to appoint Tammy Woodhouse
I'll second
as
that.
the next chief, please.
Well,
Eric, you're oddly quiet, sorry.
Well, I'm just letting people talk. Thank you, calling on your teacher, Latendra. So I think there's a piece that resonates with me here, and I certainly support that motion, is Officer Wheatus said something that struck a chord with me, in that she didn't join the department as a Blandford officer or Chester officer. She was one of our first officers that's only known the department as the Blandford Chester Department. And that's something throughout my federal career and throughout careers I've had, when there's ever been a process change or there's ever been a change in the way that business is done, I've always had to ask existing employees, well, if I brought a new person in tomorrow and they don't know any different, do you think they could do this job the way I'm asking them to do the job? And the answer is inevitably yes, rather than the resistance to change. And so I think it's very much striking for us to have a chord that says, we brought someone in that is our new process and wants to be part of the new process going forward. And I don't see it as a reward dynamic. I see it as the dynamic of, we've had good people in place, we've had a good process in place. We brought an officer on that feels at home within the department and wants to take that next step forward. So that's the vision part that I respond to, because ultimately as select boards, that's what we wanted for our community, right? We want a combination where that's just the way we do things. So I think that's the next step for us.
So the only, with the motion on the, floor, we may have to amend it to be contingent upon, contract,
Yes.
Salary negotiations.
salary
yada, yada, yada.
negotiations.
Yeah, because are we?
We would have to
haven't
move
gone
to
this far down the
executive
path. Are we appointing, are we hiring, what are we doing? Because we're talking about a full-time position here, so.
I think that we can potentially this evening.
Is it a full-time position?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was yours a full-time position?
It was not, that was part of the reason why
Okay.
we're going in this direction.
I did not know that.
So
That's
full-time
okay.
benefited position.
Right, so I mean, I agree. Everybody, I think, knows. I would agree if we want to form it that way, that it's contingent on negotiation or salary or job definition, whatever you want to call it, or.
Do we, so we surely have a job description for
Correct.
chief.
Well, we
Yes.
do.
But if we're gonna go from part-time to full-time, we're gonna have to amend it,
Well, I think,
somehow.
Wasn't that approved previously?
yeah,
We were
we've
gonna have a
already,
full-time.
done that.
Oh,
That's
well,
already
thanks for
done.
keeping me up to date.
If it's okay with Mr. Holzman,
It's like-
I would make a motion to amend that to, that we enter into negotiations with Officer Weedus to become our chief of police.
I think that's fine for now.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So I would second that. Do we-
Motion is amended.
Well, Chester's the lead, so I guess I'll call for the vote. We've got a motion and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Are we voting on, sorry, just before, are we voting on the amendment or on the motion?
You have to vote on the amendment.
One of the amendments
Let's
first.
vote on the amendment first, so that I can hear. All in favor of the amendment as put forward by Tom?
Aye.
Okay, now, back to all in
Voting on the motion
favor.
as amended.
Exactly. All in favor of that?
Aye.
The motion carries.
The only clarification point, and I know it's all done business now, is obviously this impacts budget. So we have to make sure financial planning is involved because we do see that as an extension of the budget and that we would have to communicate with. Blandford.
Is the budget you presented a full-time budget?
Yeah, so part of what we've done through this process is there is an updated job description for the chief's position based on a full-time type of an activity. The budget proposal, town administrators, please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the salary that's been presented to the candidates was $60,000 with benefits included with that process. So with the time remaining in this fiscal year, okay, so we've got a little less than 6 months, let's just call it for the easy math. The budget for the salary as well as the benefits would be able to be covered by the current budget. Since this officer, in this case, an officer becomes the chief, so they become, so my role in the past has been part-time. So what we now will have is what would have been part-time officer and part-time chief hours now combined into one role. So.
What happens to you?
So the agreement for me is that I can step away, but I will be available as on a consultative basis to the new chief to make sure that the transition happens effectively for local towns.
The equivalent of a part-time officer with knowledge, right?
I'm sorry?
Equivalent of a part-time officer to assist her, as she calls you, or whatever. I mean,
We certainly, yeah.
it's not for free, right? We want to make sure you get
You know,
compensated as well.
I've done so many things that are free throughout my career. So, on occasion, maybe if it gets into something that's more expensive, I just want this to be a success.
Yeah.
Right.
So would there be a training period?
There would be. And
Overlap.
so the motion's been made and carried. You now want to go and move into negotiations with
Yeah.
Tammy Weeks, correct? So,
Yes.
full disclosure then. So what she's been doing on her own initiative, when she started the process of applying for the position, she's actually asked to shadow me with a number of different things. Anything from office hours and making sure she understands how to do license processing, to discussing the budget, where I come up with those numbers, how I come about that, what my projections look like, short-term, long-term, to things of, equipment replacements, et cetera. So on her initiative, she's asked for that type of detail and information.
I think she knows
I've
more
offered-
than we think she does.
Yeah, so what I've got right now are actually budgets that I'm just about done with, ready for first round to go to the finance committees in both of the communities of Chester and Blandford, so that we'll have that, the town report, I'm almost done with that for both communities. So as I do that, again, the shadowing piece, and have offered, and I know Kim and Rita said, indicated this, if it means me going and sitting in with a discussion with the finance committee so that she can be a part of that process and learn that, then that would be the goal. And I would offer that to either candidate that you would have chosen.
What kind of time frame do you think that we need to have for a transition? Because, frankly, I think there does need to be some overlap.
Yeah, you know what, and this would be obviously your decision, but she's not given a notice anywhere else. She's already an officer here.
Yep.
And rather than hold on to the fact that wait until a certain date, quite frankly, I'd rather have you say, as of 2/1/21, beautiful number, right? 2/1/21, she becomes the chief, I step back, and I allow that to transition forward.
You think that's enough time?
I think you're going to have a need to go over various aspects of the position. If she gets some of the basic administrative things done, we can work on that relatively quickly. It's all the contact things and the other things that need to happen.
Yep.
I can certainly do that. If it's preferred, I can step back as an officer, let's say, for a time being, and just have her utilize me as the resource as we go through that process.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think, because I don't want to get in a position where.
I don't want to throw her in the
she's
deep end.
Yeah, right, exactly that, just
Yep.
exactly that.
And
I said I don't want to throw her in the deep end
Right.
without a life jacket.
Right, and I wouldn't allow that again, either candidate that you chose, I'm going to be available, but I find a little bit of a struggle to say, hey, we chose you, but now you're gonna have to wait until, May, March, or April, or
Yeah, yeah.
something like that, it just lingers.
Well, I want to say, and I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for everybody here, that you have done a great job.
Oh my gosh.
And I've said this before, I've been on this department for a long, long time, and involved in this town a long time. There has never been a chief of police, me included, who did anywhere near the service level and commitment and dedication and professionalism that you have had. So thank you, and I'm proud to consider you my friend.
Absolutely,
Thank
good.
you.
And have always appreciated your clear head.
I appreciate that, and it's, like I said, I pretty much in my discussion through this, I've given you the updates of where we're at. But really, one of the things it boils down to are the people that you work with, right? It's not just the communications to people. And I think we were all amazed with going through the Chester Blandford process of making the police department, how quickly that happened, for one.
Yeah.
But also how there was no infighting about things. It was, everyone came together. You already mentioned Officer Weedus was part of the Chester Blandford Police Department as one of our earlier hires in that. But I had officers, that were with Chester that quite frankly came to me and said, I'm not sure this will work, right? And I'll even use Sergeant O'Brien. He was one of them. And he made it clear. I know we talked to different people. He is now one of the people that converted and said, it works, and it works really well. And so with that, I just want to go down the path to say that it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with the select boards, the town administrators, and everybody else. But also in particular, the officers that I've had working with me. I'm very proud to have a professional group of people that know what they're doing and are there for the communities. Just like me, they put in time. Not all of it goes on the books as far as dollars and cents. And that's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to take an opportunity to thank the committee that interviewed all the candidates.
Yes, I know.
And did the heavy lifting for us. So thank you both and everyone else involved for doing that. It really helped. And you gave us two amazing candidates.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a tough choice.
It was.
No, it wasn't.
No.
It was a tough choice for me. It felt like a tough choice for
I felt
me.
it was too, Kara.
Yeah. I felt bad when he was talking about moving up here, and I was like, oh, that,
Well,
that
you're
does.
still gonna move up here, so.
So Nikki wants to give us a report.
Yes.
Do you have more to report?
And, I really kind of mentioned everything. The only thing is that I want to emphasize the budget is just about ready to go for finance committee. We've had a number of updates. I already mentioned the migration plan. So I think in the course of the evening, we've covered the different points that I wanted to make sure that you knew about. We're very much on track with the budget from both an expense and a salary standpoint. Excuse me. Still not used to this mask. I've been wearing it for a year and it's still
Ridiculous.
but,
I can't see anything.
yeah. But, it really, I'm proud of how successful that merger has happened and the ability for us to do what we have been able to do. So some good plans in play.
Yeah. We may need another merger in the future.
I know.
Yep.
Chief, are you gonna still be around when they do
No.
they're supposed to run some tests this
Collect all the
summer
folders?
Collect all the folders.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good idea.
about the repeater towers up here?
Yep. Yeah, she'll be around.
I'm glad.
In fact, Chief Mater, I kind of talked to him a little bit about some of what we're doing.
No.
We've got Pittsfield Communications, literally they were out today going over some stuff. So we're making some very good progress
Good.
along the communication line.
I know all of a sudden he dove right into it.
Yeah. There's stuff going on,
Good man to work with.
definitely.
Okay, are we ready to sign off?
I think so.
I think
Yes,
so.
I hope so.
We're adjourned.
Thank you all.